John, you can start whenever.
Okay. Call the meeting to order at 7:05. If we could take roll for the record.
Board members, Stobie?
Yep.
Board member Blythe? Board member McLaughlin?
Here. Are there any public comments that are not on the agenda? Groovy. All right. Item 3 is 19-141 electronic messaging policy explanation.
Yep.
And we'll let you take over.
Thanks.
Take as little time as you need. Oh, sorry.
Nope, you're. I'm just gonna set it right there. Hello, HRB or Historic Review Board members. I'm Katie Riggs, the City Recorder here for the City of Oregon City. And tonight I'm giving you a presentation on email and records management. I am sick with a cold, so I'm hoping my voice holds out for the whole meeting. But if not, we'll just try to quickly get through it.
Is that thing on?
Yes, it is on.
Okay.
So we are coming from a world that used to look like this with a whole bunch of paper, and we're moving into a world that is more like this one, where most of our communications, even regarding city business, is done via email, text message, social media platforms, all sorts of different types of technology and ways to communicate. So I'm coming before you tonight to provide you with a little bit of background and information about what is a public record. So this is a definition of a public record, and it's basically information that has been prepared, owned, used, retained by the city, relates to activities, transactions, or functions of the city, and is necessary to satisfy the fiscal, legal, administrative, or historical policies, requirements, or needs of the city. Some things that are not a public record are extra copies, like convenience copies of things, publications, voicemails. And also, it's important to determine who is the record keeper of certain records. For example, when Kelly sends out your agenda to you as a board member, that is technically a convenience copy for you. So the email that she sends you with the agenda attached is something that you could technically delete because she's the record keeper of that email and she's the record keeper of that agenda. So if there was a public records request asking for that email or for that agenda, it would be for Kelly's email or to go to Kelly to find that record. That for you would be a convenience copy. Any email that is sent to you from outside of the city, from like a citizen or someone that you're gonna hear at an HRB meeting, that only gets sent to you directly, that would be a public record that you would be responsible for. What we ask you to do in the case like that is to forward that email to your staff liaison, so Kelly, and oftentimes, depending upon the situation, it might go to the city recorder as well. If it's something that the city commission is hearing that night and it had originally been seen by the historic review board, then Kelly will make sure to properly distribute it to all of the board members and then also have it in the record as part of the official record of the city. With managing public records and with managing email specifically, because that's one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, we try to eliminate a lot of the redundant, outdated, or trivial junk that you get. So because you're issued tonight a city email address, you may start getting emails to that city email address that are not of city business that you need to maintain. For example, like I said, with her email that she sends out to you, sometimes you might get an email from me that has other agendas attached to it or has other just basic information. And that's something that you can delete. So you can get rid of this rot. And in your email address or your city issued email, if you want to manage it with file folders, a lot of people do, they add file folders to their email and they'll drag and drop their emails into that and manage them that way. Otherwise, you can, once you've completed your term, your 4-year term or 3-year term, we will archive all of your email that's left in your email box or that you've put into file folders. Any of the emails, which I'll get to later, that you have deleted will be deleted after a period of time. Why records management? Records management usually falls into 3 main categories. It's to minimize litigation or the liability risks, improve access to information, and safeguard essential information. The city does have public records policy and a form and a process or a procedure that is for anybody who wants to request a public record to follow that policy or procedure, fill out the form, and submit it to the city recorder's office. So if by chance you were to receive an email at your city issued email address or even your personal email address asking for information or for some sort of a record, then you would want to forward that to the city recorder's office, or you would want to direct them to the city's website where our public records request form is available. And if you need help with that, I'm sure Kelly or I could help you with that. With the public records requests, they could ask for your email, they could ask for text messages, calendars, notes, pretty much anything that has to do with city business. And it's obviously they would have to narrow the search, and there must be a reason why they were requesting that information. But those are items that they could request. Those are items that are public records. So another suggestion that we make to the members of the Historic Review Board is if you do get something to your personal email, and now that you have a city issued email address to use and for us to maintain the records and have managed them a little bit better, we ask that you not respond from your personal email address, but that you forward that email to your city issued email address and respond from there. Or if it's something that it's a public record request, then you need to, like I mentioned, have them go through that official process. But it's best case to from this point forward, once we get your city issued email addresses established, to just use those for city business and not use your personal email addresses. That way, in future litigation or in future public records requests, we would, ask you, we would tell you we've received a request, they're asking for your email. You could tell us, well, I only use my city issued email address for any city business, then we would only pull those records. We wouldn't have to worry about your personal. But if you're switching back and forth and you're sometimes using your personal, sometimes using your city issued email address, then that's a time where they could request your personal email as well. So under, I already mentioned that, in the emails and text messages, the way that you could manage them is to determine the content, determine who's the custodian of the information, and to determine managing, how you want to manage this information, if you want to build a file structure or if you're just going to leave it in your inbox, how you're going to manage it. So think about that when you get your city issued email address established, and make sure that you are reviewing those emails on a regular basis. Part of the policy, I think at the end of the policy, it says, I don't know, did you include the policy in the agenda packet?
I included what you sent me, which I think was the policy.
Okay. If you don't have a copy of the policy, I'll send it to you, but at the bottom of the policy, it does say that all members will check their city-issued email address at least twice a week, and at least on the day or the night of a meeting. So you would check it today if you had a meeting tonight, so that if Kelly had received any public comment that pertained to your meeting tonight, that she could send that out to you in advance of the meeting so you could review that. Does that make sense?
Katie, it was attached to the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you plan on publishing the email addresses such that we might expect to actually get traffic to them?
No.
Okay.
But if someone were to request your email address, we would provide it.
So if we all have our individual ones, just like our personal ones, like today, there was a group email. Is that something where if we were to do a group email on a response of, hey, don't forget tonight to come, we've got to log into that email to see if something happened, right? If someone's going to be here, if we have a quorum, we have to log into that one instead of just our regular email that we've been getting it at.
Right.
And what you're telling me, I get it from the city point of view, but from the personal point of view, I've been on this board off and on now for almost 8 years, the county board for 7, West Lynn for 4. In all that time, I've never ever received an email from anybody regarding anything on the board or the agenda or anything. So that's why I'm curious if there's enough traffic on other jurisdictions that this is a problem, that you're creating a personal email. Is that kind of what it is?
Well, it has been here at the city. It's been an issue with Planning Commission before. And not just, we have received at least 2 public records requests in the past. I think that just the past year for planning commissioners' emails, like all emails pertaining to a certain item or all emails pertaining to or during a certain time frame.
Yeah.
So unless,
Because I've never had anybody, like on an agenda item or something, have someone from that agenda item email me personally about something regarding that. Because if I did, I would have certainly immediately forwarded it to Kelly, because to me, from a legal point, that could be a conflict. That would be,
It'd be ex parte.
it'd be ex parte suddenly.
Right.
And I can't speak for everyone, but that's just never come across.
we have had that happen for other.
That's
for
what I'm curious
Yes,
about.
we have had
Yeah.
that happen to where they have emailed specific like planning commission members.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where it becomes an issue. Yeah. Gotcha.
And
And the problem, sorry.
go ahead.
The problem is that we don't know if it's going to be a problem until after the fact, right? I mean, we don't know what a public records request is going to, the scope of a public records request till we get it. And by then, the email has already happened.
But
Right.
that's really never happened with this.
No,
board.
I know, but I'm just saying that we have to do this as a precaution so that we're ready, we have the records and we're managing
Yeah,
them
you're
in a
being proactive.
uniform way, in a
Sure.
proactive way, so that we can save you, oh, we have gotten a public records request for your personal emails. And you say, I don't have any, but Katie and I have to search.
One more layer of bureaucracy is what it is.
And one
Yeah.
more potential invasion of your privacy.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not that we're going to turn over your personal emails, it's that somebody in the city is going to go through your personal emails.
Yeah. Well, that's a snooze fest.
So this slide just talks about privacy and how once you have a city issued email address, which it's actually with your personal email right now, there is no privacy because of that reason. Someone could request your personal email right now. The new policy that was adopted by the City Commission affects the Planning Commission, Historic Review Board, and the Urban Renewal Commission, mostly because those are decision-making bodies that could be appealable. And the main point of the policy itself is that if you delete an email, it will be permanently deleted after 90 days. So you can delete email like the ones I mentioned that Kelly might send you, or maybe you have a trivial email going back and forth with, two members are emailing back and forth to have lunch or something. That would be a trivial email, unless they specifically state in there excuse me, that they want to have lunch because they want to talk about specific historic review business and what that business is, then that might be a public record. Excuse me. So the main point is, if you decide to delete the junk that's in there, just make sure you review it before you delete it. And then after 90 days, your deleted emails will be permanently deleted. So again, summary is just to make sure to manage your email such as a public record, and figuring out the custody of the emails is just if you sent an email or if you were the only one that received an email from outside of the city to just you, then you would be the custody of that record and you would be responsible for maintaining that record. I also wanted to mention a few other things because it isn't very often that I come before you, but there is boards and committee resources, such as the board and committee manual that we used to hand out when we had new members. Now that manual is actually posted on our website. So there are several resources on our website. There's records management training and information on our website under the city recorders section. There's the public records request information. There's boards and committees information, and then this orientation manual. And I just wanted to point out where exactly you could find that. If you're on our homepage and you hover over the government section, there on where the big red arrow is the boards and committees section. If you click on that very top blue link where it says boards and committees, then it will bring up the page behind that, which has the board and commission manual excuse me, located there. So with that, this is the contact information for both myself and Claudia Cisneros, who is the assistant city recorder. And we are here to help you and manage any of your records or provide you with any information that you need regarding public meetings laws, public records laws, and any other assistance with boards and committees. Is there any questions?
No, that's awesome. So we should probably try and hook up with you sometime to do this, like come.
Well, what I was hoping is after this presentation that we could take a quick 5-minute break. I'll get Ray's started, and then since the next presentation is Carrie Richter's, I believe both of you have been trained before in some of her stuff. I know it's a refresher for you, but I could get both of you then each one at a time quickly to do that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I've got one question, Katie. So all my official communication with the board should be to their city email addresses.
Yes.
So for example, I sent an email yesterday just reminding them of the meeting today. And then if a couple of them responded, like, I can't make it. So emails like that, use the official city email addresses?
Yes, once they're established, and since these folks haven't established their emails yet, and you still have 2 members that haven't established their email as well, excuse me, we would want to wait until all the members have established their email so that you are ensured that all of them are getting the email.
Everything's rocking at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we can't move on to the next item. Or are we going to wait 5 minutes?
I think this would be the first time that Ray would be seeing Carrie's presentation. So if you want to wait so you can sing the whole thing, I can just.
decisions are decisions that are over-the-counter permits that city staff issues all the time for things like building permits, where the questions are, whether the applicant meets the setbacks and whether they meet the heights. These are non-discretionary reviews that have no hearing and there's no right to appeal. Type 2 decisions are more limited discretion decisions. Again, those decisions you don't see. The only types of decisions that the Historic Review Board sees are what we call type 3 decisions, which are discretionary reviews to determine compliance with the applicable approval criteria. They happen with notice, and there's a public hearing, as you know, and there's an appeal right to the City Commission. Your review as the initial decision-making body is really important for type 2 decisions because you are the place where people can bring the evidence. City Commission's review is what we call on the record, meaning that they can't submit new evidence on appeal. So the one shot for them to submit evidence to show you the reasons why the criteria are or are not met is before you. So that's sort of your role, is to sift the evidence. And that's, for Historic Review Board, that's different site plans, different materials, different designs, different, layouts, all that kind of stuff. That all falls to you as the experts in historic review. And then legislative decisions are the long-range policy-making decisions, including amendments to plan and zoning code, text or map decisions. I was thinking, Kelly, if the city were to amend its design guidelines, that would go to the Historic Review Board, right, first for comment, and they would make a recommendation to the City Commission, correct? Mm-hmm. So it's the Historic Review Board could do legislative enactments. They just have, I can't think of when we've done one, but right. They could.
If it were a code change related to the historic chapter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, the most important part of what you do, though, the bread and butter of what you do at these quasi-judicial hearings, these type 3 decisions, you know that at the beginning of every public hearing on an application, Chair McLaughlin or whoever is acting chair at the time reads a statement that is a series of disclosures. And it's really interesting and engaging. And just so you know, here are the sort of primary components to it. It has to, we have made a list of the applicable approval criteria, have been provided in the notice. We provided a staff report 7 days in advance of the hearing, and it's available in the back of the room. That we ask people to direct their testimony to the applicable approval criteria. This is a really critical one because what is the applicable approval criteria is the only thing that you can judge. An applicant may be a very kind person and be a very quality dresser and may have really nice hair, but those are not the applicable approval criteria, right? The good work that this particular applicant does, all those kinds of things are not relevant to the approval criteria. So we want to encourage folks to direct their testimony to the approval criteria. And it's important not just because your time is important and the city's staff's time is important, but it's important as an educational tool that we're educating the public about what it is that we're doing here and why we're doing it so that they can learn how to be productive and helpful as part of the public hearing process. We say that failure to raise an issue precludes raising that issue before the Land Use Board of Appeals. As I said, you are, as the initial hearing body, you are the only stop for submitting evidence. And then from there, we try to narrow issues as things get appealed. When you file an appeal, you have to raise all of the issues that you want to appeal, and you're limited to those issues that you've raised. So we want to encourage people to raise their issues so we have an opportunity to respond to them. This is what keeps people from sort of hiding in the weeds with an issue and then raising it at the City Commission level when you all didn't have a chance to vet it, right? Because you are the experts and you've been charged with evaluating in the first instance. So that's why you have to raise all the issues. We say that you have to raise constitutional issues. The constitutional issues that most often come up in land use cases are exactions issues, where the takings clause, the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, protects private property rights, private property owners from local governments asking too much or exacting too much, either in terms of private, in the conditions of approval that we attach to a decision. So that's the constitutional issue that we ask people to raise as part of the local proceeding, or they cannot go and sue the city in circuit court. And then finally is the right to an impartial tribunal. You are sitting as a historic review board member as a judge, right? Your job is not to make the policy, but to apply the policy and to evaluate the application and determine if the criteria are met. So it's important that you are impartial. So, this is going to follow along with some of the stuff that Katie mentioned, but the decisions must be based on the testimony and evidence that is part of the record. That means that you have to have an obligation to disclose ex parte contacts. Ex parte contacts are communications that occur outside of the public hearing. So if Kelly sends you an email about the upcoming agenda packet, and you have a thought about that, and you send that thought to somebody, some third party, and they send a comment back to you, that's an ex parte contact. It occurs outside of the public hearing. Those are communication outside the public hearing. Those communications can occur. There's nothing wrong with having those communications. You just have to disclose those communications as part of the public record, because we want everybody to know what evidence or information you have been given to evaluate the merits of an application. And so ex parte contacts, newspaper articles, blog posts, anything that you read, either intentionally or unintentionally, needs to be disclosed as part of the public hearing. So when it's part of the disclosures, after we get through the sort of list of all the things that we notify the public about, the chair will ask if anybody's had any ex parte contacts. And so that's your opportunity to say, I read in the newspaper this article. And better yet, if you read something in a newspaper, you ought to bring a copy of the newspaper article into the hearing or forward it to Kelly, and she'll put it in the record. Because again, we want the decision to be based on material that's in the record, not based on something that you've read. Even if you think it didn't matter to you, you read it, it's an ex parte contact, and the safest thing to do is to put it in the record. And then at that time, we give the public an opportunity to ask questions about that contact that you may have had. You need to know that, as I said, there's nothing wrong with those contacts. It's expected that you may have those contacts. You all are, historic you are connected to historic preservation in some regard. So it is likely that you will know of things that are happening in the community, and it's likely that somebody may come up and ask you. And so the point is that you need to disclose that contact, that communication. Somebody comes up to you in the grocery store and asks you about an application. You can respond that you're going to have it's going to be before you at your February meeting, and encourage that person to come. And then when we come to the February meeting, you say, I ran into somebody at the grocery store. They asked me about this. I encourage them to come to the meeting. That's all you need to do. So in addition to ex parte contacts, an impartial tribunal has to be free of actual bias. Actual bias is a predisposition rendering it impossible to make a decision based on the evidence and argument presented. That's just sort of a personal fee. We all have sort of personal passions, and we feel so strongly about them that we could not put those feelings aside and make a decision based on the approval criteria. And that may be personal, it may be professional, there may be a lot of reasons why we have a bias. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just that if you feel like you cannot put your personal opinions aside in order to make a decision based on the criteria, we need to talk. You go to Kelly and sort of talk to her about it, and she'll talk to me and or Bill, and we'll come up with a plan. The other thing is that you can't have any actual conflict of interest. And conflict of interest is when you have a direct pecuniary benefit or detriment as a result of the decision. So we had a situation before the Planning Commission where the applicant proposed a zone change, and the decision maker's son mowed the lawn of that applicant. And that was a pecuniary benefit to that person or their family. In those kinds of circumstances, we probably ought to talk to so we can kind of flesh that out. Oftentimes, if you are in the business and you stand, I mean, everybody, if you kind of think about financial connections, everybody stands to benefit one way or another by every transaction if you take it far enough away, right? But these are direct pecuniary benefits. And so we can talk about when those situations might arise. Public meetings, when a quorum of you, which are how many?
3.
So there's 5 members of the HRB right now. So when 3 of you get together and you talk about city business, that's a public meeting. And when you have a public meeting, the 3 of you sitting together talking about public business, city business, it needs to be recorded and it needs to be available to the public. And so we would be, for the 3 of you to get together in your basement and talk about city business when it's not recorded can be a violation of public meeting law, as interesting and engaging as it is. I'm sure that's what you probably would prefer to do over talking about, the latest soccer game or whatever. But so the general rule is that meetings have to be open to the public. So we have to have notice of minutes. And so there's no problem with the 3 of you getting together and talking about anything other than city business. But if you're going to talk about city business, it needs to be done in a public meeting. Public records, Katie covered this. The one thing that Katie didn't cover was instant messaging in chat rooms. Instant messaging and, chat rooms particularly are not necessarily preserved anywhere, like Facebook chat rooms. And so if you comment on one of those, we have no way of saving it for public records purposes. So we urge you not to comment on a chat room post. Use your city email, and then we have a way to track it. Because again, this is just about records management. Chat rooms and blogs are difficult to keep. So we have time limits. So the public hearing procedures that we implement are generally set out on the wall right there. And that, I don't know if you guys ever institute time limits. I don't know if you ever have enough people to do so. But you are free to institute time limits, and generally we try to follow this. The key thing about time limits is that you don't have to be uniform in your application meeting to meeting. You can decide if there's a lot of people that you do want to institute time limits, and then if there's not people at the next meeting, you don't have to. But the point is that if you're going to do time limits per matter, they need to be uniform. So you can't give one person 3 minutes, another person 15 minutes in the same matter, right? So we try to be fair about that, but there is some flexibility in time limits, and certainly the chair and the HRB can decide when it's appropriate to institute those time limits and when it may not be.
That's part of when you're doing public record. There's time limits. People that make comments have 3 minutes. The person who's the applicant may have up to 15.
Yes.
Go back and forth. So it's set in stone.
It's not set in stone.
Those time limits are set from what we have that we go by. But what you're saying
They're set by this public hearing policy right here.
Yeah.
And you don't have to follow them. If the room is empty and you have a person who wants to take 6 minutes instead of 3 minutes. And let's say that you had a room that was absolutely packed and you had 3 matters on your agenda. you could make the testimony be 2 minutes because you want to get through everything. This is the chairs and the HRB's prerogative. You don't have to, I mean, this is a guideline, but my point is it's a guideline.
It's a guideline, but some people may take that very literally and say, look, I don't care how busy it is. I want my 3 minutes. I want my 10 minutes.
But at the start of the meeting, you can say, look at how full this room is. We are not going to give you 3 minutes. We're going to give everybody 2 minutes. And you have an opportunity to submit things in writing. And there will be no problem if you were to do that.
I mean, that's all groovy. I mean, that's why we have a shot clock whenever it's around. And it's always like nice to put the hammer down. Yeah.
I'm telling you that as the HRB, you guys can decide, you guys can set your procedures that you want to set, and that these time limits are advisory.
Cool.
So after you hear from, so you have the staff report, you have the applicant's presentation, then you get testimony by interested persons, those that are in favor of an application, those that may be opposed. Then you have the applicant is entitled to rebuttal. And then you have a deliberation, which is where you close the public record and then you make a decision. There are sort of 4 critical components to your deliberation and decision that you ought to be thinking, that I'm hoping you're thinking about when you're reading the staff report and you're deliberating. Those 4 things are, first of all, your job is to interpret any ambiguous standards, and that means particularly design guidelines are ambiguous, and so your job is to give those meaning, and that meaning should come from the text of the provision itself, the context, the purpose, and the policy. And so, for example, the city has fairly discretionary design standards when it comes to style. And I think that I have myself gone back to the purpose statement set forth in the guidelines and the introduction provisions to try to glean from that sort of the intent of the guidelines to try to decide, whether a stylistic choice is appropriate. The second component is to make sure we've got adequate findings. The findings are the explanation of how the facts satisfy the criteria, and that's largely Kelly's job, and my job is to make sure that the findings provide an explanation that makes sense, to show how the evidence is submitted, and to show that the evidence submitted, how the evidence submitted meets the criteria. The decision has to be based on what we call substantial evidence, and that is there evidence in the record to support the conclusions identified in the findings? And that's largely what the drawings, I think, most specifically will show. They need to show that the criteria can be satisfied, and oftentimes there'll be a dispute over the evidence. Some people will say this is the appropriate window, and somebody else will say, but this is the appropriate window, and here's why. And when there's a dispute between 2 pieces of evidence, it's up to you all to decide who's the most reliable, what evidence you think is the most credible, and then that choice will be affirmed on appeal. So it's important that you all are thoughtful about that weighing and evaluating of the evidence. Then the sort of 4th component of your decisions are conditions of approval, and staff usually drafts those in the initial point, but oftentimes those conditions of approval get modified as part of the decision. And that's what's ensured, those conditions ensure that all the applicable approval standards are or can be met. So that's sort of the whole quasi-judicial hearing procedure in 20 minutes. Any questions? How can I be helpful? And anything else that's come up for our senior members that you want to stump the chump here?
No, I think I've been in some things that have been heated and have been testy, and it's always about, I want my time. you know, whether it was the library or the church when they had the addition some years ago, the neighbors, it was busy. It was packed and people wanted to be, and we always kept the shot clock, and when I was chairman, I would just cut them off. And it was kind of rude, but to that, if it's just a couple people and they wanted a little bit more time, yeah, that's no big deal. You kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
But I never knew in all those years that you could actually set the time based on, you know, who's here. I guess like you said, establish that at the beginning. But that's where I always think somebody's going to be in the audience that's going to challenge that and say that's not fair. You know, so what do you do?
Well, I think that the reason why the staff report is available 7 days in advance, and the staff report says that people can submit testimony in writing.
Yeah.
And I urge people to submit testimony in writing. And if you submit testimony 2 or 3 days in advance of the hearing, Kelly will email it to you and you'll have it in advance. So that can save time at the hearing because you've already seen their testimony.
Right, but nobody does that.
Well, but we're on an education mission. As the other thing is that I'm not sure how effective you can be in 3 minutes anyway.
You can't get a lot passed in 3 minutes. You can't.
So, I urge folks to coordinate testimony. You know, if there's 10 people,
They pull
coordinate.
together. And we've done that before where someone says, we want this person to speak and give them twice as much. And we've done that before.
But that you can, if you can urge folks to coordinate if you have time. You know, it's a matter of time. But my point is that about all of this is you all decide this. As long as you tell people what the rules are going to be at the beginning, you know, and it can be, you know, you have three matters on the agenda and it takes 2 hours to get through the first one. You have 2 left and you want to hear both of those matters. You are going to shorten, say, you know, Kelly, I need your report in 8 minutes instead of 15. And applicant, can you give us your presentation in 8 minutes instead of 15?
No, we'd make sure you have all 3 done in 2 hours.
Well, you may be able to do that, but all I'm saying is that you all have a lot of flexibility in how you want to run the hearing.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that discretion because it could be packed or it could be empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
One question for you or clarification. So, you know, I know we never discuss any pending applications outside of public hearing sort of situation. For matters not specific to an application, now that we have emails and whatever, if I want to say, hey, look at this cool article about solar panels on historic buildings or something like that, can we do that now? And we just need to keep it be a record? Or?
I would urge you to use your city email to share that kind of stuff. Not because I think it's because it has to do with city business, but it doesn't have to do with an application.
Right.
So it's not an ex parte contact,
Yep.
but it may be a public record.
Sure.
Because you may be starting a discussion with the 2 of these gentlemen about solar panels. And in the city and what the city's policy ought to be for solar panels.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that other than it needs to be a public record.
And we can discuss policies, as long as we keep public record intact, we can discuss potential policies or
But
materials.
no
As long as
applications.
it's not related to an application, right?
Right. We could be at lunch just hanging out saying, man, solar panels, what do you think? That's fine. That's okay. If we get into, hey, that house on so-and-so, that's not good.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And if anything comes up, I urge you to ask Kelly and she'll loop me in. And it's always better to do that whenever you think something feels weird or, you know, you want to talk about it. We're available. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Go forth and do great work.
Well, next item, PC 19-018, design advice, new construction on a residential site in the Kenema National Register District, 4th Avenue between Apperson and Blanchard. So we'll start with the commission report.
Yes, I seem to have lost my folder here, so let me bring it up. Okay. I didn't make slides, so we're just going to look at the attachments one by one. So we've got a 5,000 square foot lot in Kenema on 4th Avenue, 50 by 100 lot. This is right next to 702 4th, which is the A.E. Davis residence, the contributing structure in Kenema. We recently were looking at, can you guys see my mouse here? This property behind here was approved several months back with for a single family home and a detached garage with the ADU on top. You guys might remember that application. So we're looking at this lot right in front here that fronts on 4th. And let's see, we have a map with contours. So there's this steep, I really like this GIS layer that we have. It's the pink lines are actually the pavement width. So the 4th Avenue right-of-way is 60-ish feet wide. The pavement width is maybe less than 20, shown here. And then there's a steep slope up to this lot, and then it's fairly flat. And then there's another steep slope up at the back of the lot. So just to show you all the A.E. Davis house residents. So again, we looked at this house a lot with that last application. So you should be somewhat familiar with it. It's a vernacular home. It's about 20 feet wide, 1880, built in 1885. And it's got later additions on the back of the house. I don't know if we have a better photo of it. So let's bring up the plans here. So what's proposed, you can see the driveway, the neighboring driveway that serves 712 4th, is that right? Would be shared, would be used with, and the driveway would be built over this alley here to serve this new lot. So detached garage behind. This is also a detached garage with a living space above it. And then we've got the main structure here. The setback, so this is the historic home over on the left. So that's a 5 foot, that's the required 5 foot setback here, but the house, it looks like it's maybe 12-ish feet.
9 feet.
This is a 9 foot?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 9 feet from the property line over here. Then got our internal layout. And then so this is vernacular style, 1.5 stories, front porch. We got double hung windows. You know, I think as far as staff is concerned, nothing's really sticking out to me here as an issue. I think it's, I think this home really it adheres closely to the guidelines. And I think the question that maybe the board can weigh in on a little bit is the proximity, the closeness between this home and the historic home, being that the historic home is really close to that side property line. So, you know, do we have enough space in between the two structures is really, you know, one thing that I flagged. And then this accessory structure on top of the garage in the back. So that this would be facing the side, the front view. I guess if you could see it from 4th, if the house was not there, then you'd be looking at the side of it with the front door and the 2 windows above, and then the stairs. And so, you know, the staircase maybe something to consider, talk about the visual of that. But I'll let the board take it from here, and the applicant might want to describe, if you want to come up as well, that's fine. John, you can, whatever order you'd like to do it.
Oh, yeah. I was just, when you're saying the proximity to the other house, it's not only that, but also they almost kind of look alike. They're very similar. But, but go ahead, state your name and your address. And
Ron Beislein. I live at 712 4th Avenue, the property right next to it. And we need a bigger house for my daughter's family, which lives right across the street of our driveway at 716 4th Avenue. They've lived there longer than we have. And the original plans were these, by my grandson, but I had to get it more detailed. I gave you a narrative. I don't know if you have time to read the narrative.
read it.
A couple of things. The width of this house is a little bit wider than the one next to it, but it's less than this room width. And it is the same width as the house that just approved it underneath the house that burned a few months ago. I mean, a few years ago, but it's being, you guys approved it a few months ago.
Yeah.
The back of the house, we're not asking for any lot line adjustments. We believe we can't fit everything on the footprint. The geotech engineer would like, his response to me was that we do not recommend a higher house location for the 708 location. So he doesn't want any higher. Right now, if you notice, the plans show about a 4-foot height on that front porch. I think it's be less than that. And if you look at the garage in the back, it shows a 3-foot high step up.
Where's that?
Other way.
You want me to go up?
Top, yeah, on the left corner there. Keep going. Right there. Sorry,
Oh,
I
yeah.
said sideways. Sorry about that. He shows again, this architecture was done before the topo was done. And so the topo was done, and we do not believe you're going to need that 3-foot step up. We believe that garage will be the same height as the house floor plan, because the cutout, there's already a cutout from previous before. And so the geotech, he wants us to keep currently, he says he does not want to adapt making this cut discontinuous with the 716 cut is desirable for stability concerns. So he wants to leave that house further down, that garage further down in the footprint like the regular house. And with the topo that was done, which you do have a copy of, do you have a copy there of the topo?
Oh,
I think
the other attachment?
It's another attachment, yeah. So the topo shows the house being about 180 in the front, and the garage height will be in the back about 184 or 185 probably in the back. And the back wall of the garage will be a retaining wall.
So it'll be up higher.
It'll be,
The garage will be up higher.
the garage will be the same height, but the second story should be the same. The main floor will be still at one, because the house is still at, the house is 4 foot higher. So that means the 4 foot in the front at 180, or really it's 181, will be straight across all the way to the garage floor at 185. So the house will still be 4 foot higher, but we will not need that 3 foot difference.
Gotcha.
In the garage. We believe from the topo, from this topo. But the civil engineer will decide that. But the geotech would not. The reason is because the property behind it, for the geologist said, that's all rock, by the way. When we dug that hill out, it was all rock, the shale rock. And he said what happened is a landslide when the ice age came through, that shelf dropped straight down. It did not fall over, it dropped straight down, so it's very stable. They don't want to dig into that shelf because the house behind is being built on top of that shelf. So they want to keep the same cut as currently at our house of 716. That's why we don't want to shove the garage down back further behind the property. So, but we still have 7 feet from the back of the property. As far as the concern of the setback to the right side of the house with each other, the other house next to it, we did move it toward the driveway more. And the reason we wanted to keep it 9 feet, which is the code, code shows 5 foot one side, 9 foot the other side, is for two reasons. The house across the street, which is Gretchen's house, and they built that new house next to it. Their house is about the same distance as our house is from their house, from their garage. Also, too, is the current owner has a dog run right there with pit bulls. We don't really spend a lot of time with the kids over there on that side of the house, so most of their yard will be on this side of the house, on this plan, this side of the house. The house is designed a little bit different than the house next to it. If you notice, we tried it on purpose. The front door on the house next to it is to the left, and then there's 2 windows to the right. So we moved it, so we made it different, so that our door would be different. The porch in that house comes straight down the front. We put ours off to the right. So we did make it different than the house next to it. Do that on purpose because we knew we'd want to copy that house.
Can you scroll? My only thing was, so that property on the right that has the drive that goes to the back, this house, I mean, there'll be an easement to use that property to cross to go up and cross the alley to get to the house.
Yes.
And that's you.
That's me, right?
So you're going to create an easement for that access for them.
Yes, we'll go across the right of way. We've already talked to the city. They don't want another driveway off of 4.
Right, but I'm saying your driveway.
Yes.
They're going to access and use.
Right, correct, yes.
Yeah, that's what my question was.
Yeah, if you go and look at the top picture, again, you'll see the driveway coming
Yeah,
our driveway. Yes.
I just wanted to establish that was
Yeah,
you.
right,
And
right.
they're coming across that and they're using it.
And you said it would be gravel and the,
Yes, it could be gravel. We don't plan on putting any utilities in there. It can be gravel. I thought maybe, I saw the golf course up here, Oregon City Golf Course. They put the cement with the space in between for grass, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really care. We weren't planning on paving it. We were planning on leaving it natural or putting those things in there. It all depends on what the city wants to do. It's their right of way. They do not want us to vacate the property, put a driveway in.
Sure.
They said, we don't want that. We want you to use your existing driveway.
Well, my only thing with this property is the garage. And can you go to that one? Yeah. So this view with the garage doors, you can and you can't see it from the street. It's back there, but it's pretty blunt. What size are those doors? The garage doors, are they 8?
Yeah, they're regular size.
They're 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're probably 8 by 8s or something. So your plan is like for this ADU to stick frame that roof so it's vaulted?
I would like to.
Okay, I mean, you'd have to because of the way the windows are.
Yeah.
And you've got a lower pony wall. So my only suggestion, and I don't know if, there's got to be a way to soften this side.
Okay.
It's very blunt, and I would suggest like a gable. Something like, I mean, this is cheesy, but something like this.
Sure.
Where you can bring light in, can you see that? Mm-hmm. The one right here is more of a craftsman look. This is more of a Queen Anne, but it would fit with vernacular.
right? Probably
This
the
guy.
interior plan is split.
Okay.
There's a wall straight down the center there. I think.
I know, but if you look at the floor plans, I don't know where the floor,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we can do something.
you still can do that.
Yeah.
You could put a gable there, and that's why I drew with the 2 windows. There'd be a wall right there, but
For sure.
but you could make that work. And if you're going to stick frame this already,
Yeah.
this would soften this and it would make it subjugated to the house, but it would have an element of the house.
Yep.
But this is still kind of vernacular
Yep.
because that's a real blunt, ugly side.
I
And
agree.
that's the side that everybody sees.
Yeah.
So-
I came to Kelly and asked about this. Can we do this? Because originally it was looking that way. I said, but I don't like it. I don't want a deck out there.
No, I wouldn't do a
So-
deck. I would just do a gable there. If you're vaulting, if those are 2 little rooms, suddenly they feel bigger.
Yep.
And the stairs, that's a retaining wall, and you're going to have those. There's ways to soften that so it's not so kapow, but
You're not going to see those stairs.
no. But I think even as you come up to this, if you had a gable there, that's going to make that building far more attractive. I would suggest that.
Okay.
And I think that would that would go a long way to making life easier for you,
Yep.
I think.
The stairs will be hidden by the house. Not only that, there's a rock wall where that, to the right of that, there's already a rock wall on the right of way there for steps. So that's going to be shoved back. So you should not see those stairs really.
And I think even with this pony wall and you're going up to an 812, it's not a huge gable, but I think it would look all right.
Yep.
I think, but can we go to the floor plan again, please?
This one?
Yeah. So right here, you would still get that, and that could even be moved a ditch. I think it would still work. Yeah, you see how that's off? You could even
Right.
shift that wall just a titch.
Yep.
But I don't know. Anyway, there's ways to make that work, and I think it would look better. Because
Yeah, those, right now, right now, we're not going to do anything up there. We're just going to,
oh yeah, you could keep it unfinished, whatever, but at least that'll have the look,
right,
and it'll,
yeah, right,
it'll
yeah.
look a lot better.
I agree.
So, anyway, that's all I had. I don't know if anybody else has anything else, but everything else to me looks just great. But I'm only speaking for me.
No, that's pretty consistent with my comments, is that just that one side is, like you said, very blunt.
Yeah.
So it's adding a little bit of interest there in the garage doors design.
Yeah. It would soften that side.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't know if it would be appropriate to put like an architectural feature split it above the garage doors, like a pergola or something.
A floating pergola or something like that. You could. Also, what could also separate that is a belly band that could go across to, that would help. Yeah. Yeah. That's all I got.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay.
Can I have your
Thanks.
sketch?
What's
Can I
that?
have your sketch?
Yeah, take it. It's pretty cheesy. but-
Actually, I should probably scan that
Okay.
and put it in the record and
Can
then
you
I'll
send it
send
to
it
me?
to you.
Okay.
Or unless you want to take a picture of it with your phone.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that too.
Do that. Can you do that?
Yeah, but I would like to scan it for the record.
Well, you can take it home and admire it if you want. Yeah, take a picture of that and then give it to Kelly, but thank you.
Thank you.
I would add that as a condition of approval, we'd add carriage-style garage doors. I mean, I know you're not gonna, the drawings are just any garage door right now, but,
For shizzle.
Yeah.
and just for the benefit of the record, the design advice is non-binding and it's individual remarks from board members.
That's why I concluded by saying that's just me talking. Yeah, okay. Well, let's go on to item 6, the minutes for January, February, and March. And we can approve all concurrently.
You can approve them all with one motion.
Yes, does anybody have any issue with the minutes or does any questions on anything?
No.
I reviewed them, they look good.
You had a lot of time on your hands. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the draft minutes for January, February, and March of 2018.
I'll second.
Can we call for a vote?
Board Member Stobie?
Aye.
Board Member Blythe?
Aye.
Board Member McLaughlin?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, any communications, number 7?
Next meeting, April 2nd, we're gonna have an open house from 4 to 6 PM here in this room before the meeting. I'm inviting, it's for the HRB policy updates. So I have the same kind of materials that I've been taking to the neighborhood meetings. I'll have here kind of boards where people can put Post-its up and we'll have some of the samples out. So that's an opportunity for people maybe not in McLaughlin or Kenema or that don't go to the neighborhood association meetings to come and see what the policy updates are all about and give input. So you all are welcome to attend that open house, but you don't need to. We'll have staff there to kind of answer questions. And then we'll have our meeting. I don't have any agenda items for that meeting just yet, aside from, continuing our discussion about the HRB policies. Actually, I might have items, but I don't know what they are right now, but we haven't received any applications. I'm getting lots of inquiries about potential, design advice, and, there are some lots for sale in Kenema, and so there's a lot kind of that might be coming down the pipeline, but nothing has been turned in yet for next meeting. My director wanted me to share with you, here it is. If I can find it, the Ermitinger House events. There's a presentation on March 16th about Greek Revival architecture at 1 o'clock at the Ermitinger House. And then that's the only upcoming event before our next meeting. But anyway, that house was just kind of renovated, and so it's open now Fridays and Saturdays from 10 to 4. So if you haven't visited, you can check out the improvements that have been made to the Ermitinger House. It's just down the street here. And send me any nominations for the Ruth McBride Powers Preservation Board, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
What, did anything ever happen with that design advice? I guess not, because we would have seen the application, but for it was 4th Avenue and
that couple
Hedges
that came
Street
in.
right away. I think they're like the Russian
Yeah,
couple today.
I wasn't gonna
Yes,
say that. But yes, that's
I'm still, their architect has still been in touch with me. So I think they want to schedule, my understanding is that they want to schedule a pre-application meeting for the geologic hazard portion. Before and so then they might come back, or they might just turn in an application, but they're working on the geologic hazard part.
Okay, I remember them. They had kind of a similar thing back the road. Yeah. Okay, so we can adjourn? Mm-hmm. Okay. Not all of us get to be in Ecuador, but we get to be here.
Yeah.